Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Tom welcoming you to another study in the Word. I'm glad you could join me today. We're going to do our third session on marriage and family, something that I want to do quite a few more sessions on. So I'd like you to turn to Ephesians chapter 6, and while you're doing so, I would like to remind you that please, if you would like to, please subscribe to our YouTube video and go to our website, faithalivefellowship.org. We have free seminars on our website, faithalivefellowship.org, and you can give your prayer requests at faithalivefellowship.org. There's buttons to hop onto our YouTube pages. We have another YouTube page for the church, FAF Videos 1, and you can go to our Twitter page, you can go to our Facebook pages, and so on. That's faithalivefellowship.org. Pray about becoming a partner with us. We'd appreciate the help. We need help to get the gospel out, and so just be led by the Holy Spirit. If you feel like God is leading you to be a partner with us, we'd appreciate that. And you can do that at faithalivefellowship.org. Many different ways. It'll tell you how. And please feel free to do that, and feel free to give any amount. We'd really appreciate it. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1. Is where I want to read today. Very, very powerful and important scripture. It says simply, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right." Now, there's a lot of things here that we need to discuss just in this one verse, so I'm going to go ahead and discuss because it's full of meanings here for us. There's an exhortation here. These are for born-again, spirit-filled people. You need to understand that because you can't expect the world to do these things. But he's writing to children that are in the Lord. He's writing to parents that are in the Lord. You notice that phrase where it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right." Sometimes, in some cases today, unfortunately, their parents are not in the Lord, and they're trying to make their children do things that are not right and not correct and not godly, and children have no need to follow that. But I have to say that nowadays, unfortunately, but if you are in a good spirit-filled family where the husband and wife are born again spirit-filled and the children are born again spirit-filled, this is an exhortation to them of what to do. Notice it says, "Obey your parents in the Lord." So first of all, the parents should be in the Lord. They should be in Christ, in the church. The parents should be serving God with all their hearts and striving to bring their children up in the ways of God. This is a right thing to do. And I want to just say this to you. That means things like making sure your family is in a good spirit-filled church, making sure, praise God, that you are bringing them, doing everything you can for your children. And but it says, the children here are to obey their parents. Now, I want to spend the rest of my time talking about this word obey because it's a very important word to understand, because this word obey is from a Greek term that is clearly a military term used to mean to sit under someone with more authority and do it for your own good. In the military, there is an order. There's the 5-star generals, and then you got, generals, and then you got, the colonels and different ranks and majors, and it goes to, captains and lieutenants, and then you got your corporals, your corporals and privates and sergeants and so on. And there is a very definite, form of who's in authority and learning to submit to authority. You may be in authority at one moment. You may learn to submit to authority at another moment. But there's always going to be somebody over you, because we have to understand that, first of all, the head of the church is Jesus Christ. But, it's really important for children to learn to obey. And this word obey here means to be brought up in the ways of authority and submission. Now, I know that sometimes that's not a popular term, submission, but in the family unit, the children are to be subversive to of course, and obey their parents. To understand this principle of authority and submission as God's plan for us, it needs to be described as a plan of protection. for all of us, not just in family, but in all forms of life. If you really think about it, that we're always going to be in authority to somebody. We have to learn how to handle that. We have to learn how to be in authority. We have to learn how to be submissive, both. To understand this authority submission principle is vital for children, and it's because if it's not rooted in them, then they'll become rebellious against any kind of authority, and not just parents. So parents, I want to exhort you. This is absolutely vital, what I'm going to tell you right now. You must, from the very earliest stages of a child's growth, learn to teach your children about the order of authority and submission. They're going to face submission in every kind of realm in life, and if they're the type of people that develop a rebellious attitude towards authority, they're going to get in trouble every time. They're going to rebel against the police laws, possible end up in prison. You know how that works. They're going to go out there and they're going to try to get a job, and they're not going to be able to submit to their bosses, and they're going to lose their jobs. In a church setting, they could be the type of people that cause problems because they can't submit to any kind of authority in a church situation. So it becomes vital just in life to learn the principle of authority and submission. So the children are in a submissive role in the family unit under the parents, of course. But you would think in many, many cases today that the children are in charge, even from an early age. I see so many young parents who don't know anything about that. They don't know how to discipline properly. They allow their children to get away with way too much. The children learn to manipulate the parents by doing things like crying, or, if they cry long enough, they're going to get their way. If they do an activity long enough, they're going to get their way. And they'll push the buttons as they're growing to find out what they can get away with. That's human beings. That's that sin nature that begins to crop up even at the earliest stages of our development, and must be curbed. And it must be curbed by this thing called learning how to obey. Children, obey your parents. Learn how to submit to authority, because it is a good thing for you to do. It is a protected thing. It is a wonderful thing. It literally, being obedient to parents is something that can reap benefits for years to come, even affect your health and affect because you learn the principle of submission will affect even your health and the longevity of your life, as it says in the preceding verses. So it's very important. This word also clearly means to sit under someone as a disciple, a pupil, like at school. You have the teacher, you have the pupils. Parents are the teachers. The pupils are the students. The students are the children, of course. This means they are to learn from both parents. And I want to emphasize this. So many times in families we see today that you have one parent doing all the work with the children, namely most of the time, a lot of times it's the wife, and the husband not involved so much. It takes both the husband and the wife to create that safe atmosphere. The man has a certain perspective, and a woman has a certain perspective. Both of them have a different perspective that both children, either male or female children, need to understand. And so it's very vital to communicate in your family. It's very vital for both parents to communicate to their children, to teach their children, to be teachers of their children. So this word actually means that too. They must learn to listen. We must spend quality time with our children, talking about different subjects, explaining different subjects as they grow older and older, talking about even difficult subjects such as sex, drugs in school, child abuse, what could happen to them, happen to them if they run with strangers. I mean, in the world today, there is so much training that needs to be done at an early age simply for protection purposes. And so this is what it means. And you're really going to have to ask God for wisdom, folks, when it comes to these type of things. There's a time and a place to share these things, and it is the parent's responsibility. I do not believe it's the school's responsibility to teach them everything. especially some of these areas we just talking about. It should be the parents' responsibility for that. And I think the school system should stay out of that kind of stuff. But that's just me. But we need to tell our children what biblically is right and wrong. And we need to teach it to them from the earliest of ages in a way they can understand, not so that they can be mean to people or be abusive to people, but in an understanding that human beings are sinners, and some people out there are going to do things that are unbiblical and ungodly, and they need to learn what is right and wrong and stay away from that because these activities are dangerous. So there has to be the teaching part of both parents, and that's very, very vital. You are a teacher whether you want to be or not. They're going to look at your lifestyle. Your lifestyle needs to be good. You need to do what you say and say what you do. If you tell your children you're going to spank them, as an example, or if you discipline that way, which you probably should at times, and you tell them one more time and you're going to get a spanking, you do that one more time, you're going to get a spanking, and you don't do it, then they will begin to understand that you're not a person of your word. You need to be a person of your word. If you're going to discipline your child, you need to be consistent. Consistency in discipline is very important, because if you're not consistent in discipline, you're going to find out that they are not going to learn to obey you properly. What they're going to do is just that they're going to think they can yank your chain anytime. And I see a lot of parents that basically a child controls everything about the whole life. And it's ridiculous. They start crying, they go pick them up. And sometimes they need to be left in their crib and let them cry it out. And I know that sounds cruel. Some people, I couldn't do that. Yes, you can, especially if you have had a few children. You'll find out that it's not going to hurt them. Sometimes they have to sit in there and cry until they go to sleep. They're not going to get their way. They're not going to yank your chain over something all the time. It's good for them. So if they're going to obey, there has to be rules to obey. Children need rules. And your child needs rules at an early age. And as you upbring them, you need to give them more things to obey and more rules. The child must understand who is in charge. This needs to start from an infant stage. They're going to try to find ways to get their own way. That's human nature. It's called sin, rebellion. They're going to cry to get what they want. They're going to throw stuff on the floor to get you to pick it up. And if you start yielding to their every whim and everything they do, they're going to do it, and they're going to do it and do it. No, they can manipulate you. Well, I can get mama to do this if I do this, Sometimes they'll drop a toy over and over, or there's 1,000 different things they do. Kids are really funny. So what we have to do is we have to make them learn to obey, and that there's consequences to the things they do. And this needs to be lovingly stopped, these type of things, with simple, loving forms of discipline. And when we do that, we also need to not just discipline them for their bad behavior, but we need to encourage them, and we need to reward them for their good behaviors. It could be as simple as if Johnny does what you ask him to do today and is a good boy and doesn't do that anymore, then maybe he gets a treat or a little ice cream or something like that. And the rewarding of good behavior is part of life. It's something if we do what's right, we reap what we sow. God watches over us. We do what is right. He's going to learn how to do that. I think kids need to learn how to obey in finances. They need to bring their tithes. If they receive a dollar bill from something or somebody, then 10% goes to the church. They learn how to obey that way. They need to have chores. They need to have fixed things to learn how to do that they are responsible for, and it must be followed up on by the parent. You are teaching them. That means that when you tell them to clean their room when they get old enough to do that, or make a bed, or whatever it is that you do, pick up their toys, you must follow up on it, and you must make sure that they have done it and done it properly before they go on. And every time that we discipline our children, I think we need to also remember that after the discipline is done and the message has been received by the child, which means sometimes they need to pray for forgiveness and they need to ask for forgiveness. Once there is that communication, then the child must be loved on, and the child must be told that they're precious and loved, and that you always need to let the child know why the discipline was important. because their activity or what they're doing is going to cause them to learn how to do things that are going to be wrong, rebellious, evil, and even dangerous in society. So they need to know the consequences for breaking the rules. There's consequences in life for breaking the rules. And if you go out in life, there's consequences for not doing your work right. And there's consequences for not obeying the laws of the land. There's consequences for speeding. There's consequences for, for handling any situation that improperly. There could be consequences, and they need to know that. That's how you are to train your children. Rules need to be explained as soon as they can, with the understanding that a child can understand about rules, why rules are important, why they shouldn't touch the stove when it's hot. Of course, they're going to learn one way or the other on that, aren't they? Be better if they learn that, listen, you burnt your hand on the stove because you didn't listen to daddy or you didn't listen to mama. This is why you must learn to listen to mama. When daddy and mama tell you something, it is because we love you, and because we know more than you do, and because we've been on earth longer than you do, and there's certain things that you can do and certain things that you can't do, certain things you're ready to do, certain things you're not ready to do, certain things that if you do them, they will cause pain, and you don't want to do them. And you can do it in a way that doesn't breed fear in them, but they need to know right and wrong. They need to have some discipline. They need to have some consequences, and they certainly need to be encouraged when they do right. And you also need to realize that little children, above all the things in the world, have different personalities. Some of them are more stubborn than others. Some of them got stronger personalities. Some of them are very easy to train. Some of them, it's really a lot of work, but it'd be worth the work, especially right off, no matter what kind of little personality they got. And some of them, especially sometimes little boys, can be really difficult because they're just all over the place. But you have to constantly, that's your job as a parent, constantly train them. So as soon as it's possible, it's good to start giving them chores. I'm a big one for that. I think it's important. And the chores need to be not only told what is expected of them, but followed up upon. And if they are not followed up upon the right way, then that is going to have circumstances. It's going to cause them not to maybe have a timeout, not to be able to play with a toy. There's a lot of different ways, and if you ask God for every particular child, some children you might have to actually spank a little bit. Some children you might not have to do that much. There's certain children that you can just look at them or raise your voice a little bit in a certain tone, and that's enough. They know they're wrong. They've been chastised. They'll even start crying, so every child's different. Some of them you're going to have to whip a little bit. I needed to be whipped when I was a child because I was a boy and because I was, inquisitive and climbing on stuff. And so my mom and dad had to sometimes make a statement to me, and the little pain on my little rear or whatever was enough to get my attention and understand that it was unpleasant if I did certain things. And that's the way parents have to parent. They have to, do that and then let them know why that punishment was meted out and how come and what the reason for it was. It's also important to teach your children that when they're with other parents or other people that they have to be an authority to, whether it be grandma, grandpa, aunts, or uncles, whatever the case may be, wherever they may be in line, going to, that they need to obey, and they need to obey, and they need to in certain terms. And it's also very important that you check with your grandparents, your parents, or whoever, that the children did obey. What did they do? What didn't they do? And be honest about it. I need to know if they're not obeying, if they're not doing something, because kids tend to try to push the envelope sometimes at grandma and grandpa's, and that's natural. Grandma and grandpa's going to let them get away with stuff more than parents do sometimes, and let them have a little bit more fun. How do I know? Because I'm a grandparent, and that's just the way it is. But they still need to obey. If grandma and grandpa say stop, there needs to be a stopping. Grandma and grandpa say pick up the toys. There needs to be a understanding they need to pick up the toys, and that is training. So if you have children and they are under your care, there still needs to be training. I still train my grandkids, and so does my wife, especially my wife. She's like a sergeant. I'm more the fun guy. But we all train, and we all sit down, and we all talk, and we share. And sometimes we ask questions. And I like to ask questions to my children as they're growing older. And I like them to give me their answers, and then I like to discuss the certain subject that we're talking about. Maybe it can be something as simple as a truck, or something as simple as playing basketball or baseball, or whatever it is they like to do. If you sit down and talk with them and show interest in what they're doing and know that you're involved in their life, it means a lot to them. It's very important. I would say the number one thing in parenting is to show love, to discipline when needed, but also to be involved in their life on an intimate relationship, an intimate way. And talking and sharing and being involved in their life means everything to children growing up. And if dad communicates to his daughter and is a good communicator to his daughter, the chances of her being promiscuous are really pretty limited. But if dad is aloof, gone all the time, just works, never talks to him, doesn't spend any time with him, you're going to have those problems. And that's just a proven fact. It's the same normally with a mother. If a mother is aloof and she's withdrawn all the time, she's depressed, she's in her room, she never talks to him, she doesn't know how to keep control of the situation, they're going to run wild and they're going to get crazy. And they're going to go out and do things they shouldn't do. So, children need to learn to obey. This is part of marriage and raising children. Well, I preach myself happy. Please go to faithalifefellowship.org. Please subscribe, and if you've liked this video, please share it. That's how these videos get along. Share it with 10 people if you've learned something from it. And remember, we have on our YouTube page here, we have playlists, different kinds of playlists that you can go into. Just go into those playlists, and you'll see all these different types of teachings that I've done in certain areas, some in-depth teaching. And you can go in there and you can listen to them and go through a series and learn about that particular subject. Please share this with other people. That's how these things get around there. Until next time, remember this: feed your faith and starve your doubts to death. We love you. Till next time, this is Pastor Tom. God bless you guys. Have a great week.